morning, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to be discussing your project manager, which is your liver. Your liver lives under your right rib. And a very good liver function test is just to poke your liver. Just push it very hard. And if it's not happy, what will it say to you? Don't. Don't. If you want to know what it should look like, push the other side. And if it's a little tender, don't be concerned, because it's a recoverable organ. It's the only organ in the body that has the ability to regrow, totally regrow. Like the shark's teeth, constantly regrowing. When they do a liver transplant, they can actually just do a part of the liver because the liver will grow. When you consider what we're going to be considering this morning, you will understand why God made the liver to be a recoverable organ, because many people would not be living today if it wasn't a recoverable organ. Being a recoverable organ, it is able to regenerate and it is able to regrow. So let's have a look at the liver, because as I said yesterday, if the project manager is happy, the job site is running well. And by the way, cancer cannot get a hold on the body if the liver is running well. So very important to understand the liver. To understand what your liver is doing today, we need to go way back to that time when you ate solid food. Do you remember it? A few days ago. We're going to feed you again tomorrow. We need to have a look at what your liver does with the food that you eat, because every single thing that goes into your body goes through your liver. Everything that's coming out of your body goes through the liver first and under the jurisdiction of the liver. And that's what we're going to be having a look at today, after we have a look at what happens when food goes in. Never in the history of mankind have human beings consumed so many carbohydrates. Never. Let's have a look at what Aussies consume. What would most Aussies have had for breakfast? Cereal. Very popular food. There's a whole aisle devoted to it in the supermarket, so it must be popular. Very easy for such a fast society. Open cereal, pour into bowl, milk on, eat. And especially when the milk goes on and it all just goes like wet tissue paper, you don't even have to chew, down it is and off to work. I remember when muesli first hit the scene. I was talking to my cousin, I was about 16. I said, "What do you think of muesli?" He said, "Oh, I don't like it." I said, "Why not?" He said, "I have to chew and I haven't got time for that." Cereal or toast, bread. Tell you what, in every corner shop you'll find bread, won't you? Mid-morning, cakes, biscuits. I trained as a psychiatric nurse. Nurses are some of the unhealthiest people. Not all nurses, but a lot are. I would wake at 5 to 7, I've got to be on duty at 7, running down the nurse's home stairs doing my buttons up in the ward just on the dot of 7. Hadn't drunk water, nothing to eat. What would we nurses do in our coffee break mid-morning? Whole packet of Arnott's assorted biscuits dunking in cups of tea and coffee. Big cakes, biscuits, consumers. And have you noticed the size of most nurses? They're big. And we'll show you why in a minute. Pasta. I didn't know what pasta was as a child. I'm a 5th generation Australian. We didn't even know what pasta was. We had sausages, mashed potato, peas or beans every night of the week, except for Sunday. Roast. Rice. I didn't know what rice was till I was about 15 and a new product came on the market called rice-a-riso. Mum brought it home. We started to have rice. Pizza. I don't think Aussies knew what pizza was 30 years ago, but it's a popular food now. Pie. Well, the pies have always been around. There's even a song about it, isn't it? Meat pies, kangaroos and Holden cars. I'm married to an Irishman. What must every meal contain? Well, every main meal. Potatoes. And last and definitely least on the list is the pure crystallised acid that's been extracted from the sugarcane plant. Why do I say least? Because there's no such thing as nourishment in that food. I'm sorry, it's not a food, it is a drug. Would you agree with me that Aussies are high carbohydrate consumers? Yes. All of these foods come under the carbohydrate list, and when they break down in the gastrointestinal tract, they break down to glucose. Glucose is a single structure, and it's only as a single structure that it can be absorbed into your blood. Do you know that you have a hollow tube in your body? It's your gastrointestinal tract, and everything that goes in there is not part of you until it gets absorbed into the blood. Then it becomes part of you. And it can only be absorbed into the blood when it is broken down to singular structures. So these foods get broken down as a singular structure. Glucose gets absorbed into the blood, goes on the M1 main highway straight to the project manager. My son's a project manager on a building site. When the plasterers come in, they go to James. When the plumbers come in, they go to James. He's orchestrating the job site. That is what the liver's doing. So the glucose goes to the liver, and the liver determines where the glucose goes. Number one, the glucose is sent to the cell to be burnt as fuel. It is the main fuel used by every cell in the body. Number two, it is stored as glycogen. Glycogen is a name given to quick-release glucose stores. Your liver stores some, but it only can store a little. Your working muscles store some. When you walked up the hill this morning, do you know how you got up the hill? It was your glycogen stores. And the glycogen stored in your working muscles is like it's in a prison. It can only be used by your working muscles. But the glycogen stored in your liver, it can be sent all over the body. But only so much glycogen can be stored. And on a high carbohydrate diet, high glucose is released into the bloodstream. And there's a lot of glucose still left over from being used as the cell and stored as glycogen. And so that excess glucose is stored in the most effective way it can be stored, and that is as fat. This is a fact that many people are unaware of. And when someone wants to lose weight, what part of the diet do they stop? The fat, yeah? The fat. And do they lose weight? Not much. And fat is an essential nutrient. And fat is one of the substances that helps to give a person the satiation feeling or the feeling of satisfaction. And that is why when people are on fat-free diets, you'll find they've got to eat all day long because they never get the satisfaction feeling. One guy, when he heard this, he said, my girlfriend, she has a cup of coffee with skim milk and 3 teaspoons of sugar. What would she be better to have? Actually, no sugar and full cream milk. Actually, better to have none. You see, it's a misconception. When I was in New York in April, I consulted with a couple who asked for a consultation, and it surprised me because they were both in their 60s, both obvious professionals. When I consulted with them, I found out they were both doctors of chiropractic, they were both qualified nutritionists. By the way, amazing musicians. He was head of music in the whole of the New York area. I said, why are you coming to see me? And they said, we used to be Dr. Atkins patients. Wow, I was very excited to meet Dr. Atkins patients. We've all heard of Atkins, yeah? What was Atkins famous for? A diet that no one had ever dared put forth before. What was it? It was high meat, high fat, no carbohydrates. They said, we went to Atkins, let's see, probably early 90s, so probably 20 years ago. They went and saw Atkins. We'd heard of his fame. Well, you see, his book was #1 on the New York Times book list 4 years running. Someone loved him. Nutritionists hated him. Why did the people love him? It's very simple. It worked. And isn't that what everyone's interested in? It worked. They said, Atkins took us off our high carbohydrate diet. They said we're vegetarians. By the way, he said, we went to him because we were putting on weight. We were pre-diabetic. We had no energy. We were not happy with our life, and we'd heard that he'd got fantastic results. So we began to eat meat. You see, the Atkins diet, he suggests 20 grams of carbohydrate a day. Now, the recommended daily allowance for carbohydrate is 300 grams a day. So that's quite a drop. But Atkins had done his research, and he knew that you can actually live without carbohydrates. I don't suggest you do. And there's a huge difference between refined carbohydrate and whole grain carbohydrate. So they said, we went on the Atkins diet. We dropped our carbohydrates down to 20 grams a day. He has 4 stages. Stage 1 is 20. They said our energy levels skyrocketed. The weight just fell off us. Our blood sugar levels came back to normal. Wow. They said the results were absolutely amazing. I said, why have you come to see me? They said to me, we're not happy with the meat. We don't like it. We're starting to get a bit of arthritis. You are the first nutritionist that hasn't totally crucified Atkins. And don't most people do? I said, I don't crucify him because I believe he was a hero. I believe he was a man of his time. Because his theory worked. This was his theory. When too much carbohydrate goes in, it stores as fat. You stop the carbohydrates, what does the body now live on now? Fat. You don't have to be a rocket scientist to work that one out, do you? His story is interesting. He didn't experiment on himself because he was a bit overweight, sluggish. He stopped his carbohydrates. What did he eat? He chose a food that had no carbohydrates. Meats. Chicken, fish, all your red meats. Dairy products, very low in carbohydrates. Then he chose a food that is very low, which is vegetables, with the exclusion of the potato. The weight just fell off him. His energy levels were great. That's why he started to put his patients on, and that's why, and the results he saw in his patients amazed him. His diabetics were coming off their insulin. Wow. You see, a high carbohydrate diet releasing high glucose, it puts a huge strain on the pancreas because here's pancreas under your left rib. Pancreas has a high demand of insulin when high glucose comes into the blood. So when someone's on this high carbohydrate diet, the pancreas is just about getting screamed at all day long. More insulin, more insulin, more insulin. How would you feel if you were yelled at like that all day? You get to the stage where you'd say, I'm not coming to work anymore. And that's what pancreas does. 400 diabetics diagnosed daily in Australia. And what are Aussies eating? Tell you, the amount of sugar that Aussies are eating now is almost quadrupled to what it was 50 years ago. When I was a little girl and Mum asked me to go down the street and get a bag of apples, she'd give me a penny and I'd buy a cobber. And a cobber was like a caramel thing with chocolate around it. I got about 2 a week. And I got a fizzy drink once a year at the Apex Christmas party. What are kids getting today? What I just described in the first 2 hours of the day. And if my generation, I'm a baby boomer in my 50s, if my generation is coming up with 400 new diabetics diagnosed daily in Australia. By the way, I think when you were here last time, Di, I was saying 300. It's a bit scary. What will it be in a year or two, 500, 600? Doesn't seem to be slowing down because there's a lot of advertising around this guy. What do they say on the television? Sugar, a natural part of life. That's like saying heroin, a natural part of life. Huh? Nothing wrong with sugarcane. Nothing wrong with the poppy plant. It's the acid that's extracted. Atkins found his diabetics were coming off their medication. Their pancreases were getting a break and they were starting to revive. One lady said, my pancreas is dead. I said, is it gangrene? Isn't that what dead is? If there's blood going through the pancreas, there's life going through the pancreas and it can revive. We had a young man, type 1 diabetic, 22 years of age, been on insulin since he was 7, do our program. At the end of the week, he'd reduced his insulin by 3/4. Wow, we weren't giving him bags of lollies every day. When the guy who discovered insulin found out what medicine was doing with it, he was horrified. Because insulin basically allows people to keep eating this. But people die from diabetes, and actually it's not a cure. And he knew it wasn't a cure. Atkins also found, when he began to put his patients on it within about the year, not only were the diabetics coming off their medication, but his cancer patients were going into remission. Do you remember yesterday we looked at the link between cancer and fungus? What's fungus' favourite food? Sugar, glucose. And it's neck to neck with heart disease today as #1 killer in Australia on this high carbohydrate diet, giving cancer the fuel it loves. On the Atkins diet, down to 20 grams of carbohydrates a day, his cancer patients were going into remission. Wow. His patients with high cholesterol levels were coming back to normal. Your liver makes cholesterol. And your liver will make as much cholesterol as your body asks it to make. You see that? And have you heard that LDL is the bad one? Low density lipoprotein. You know what low density lipoprotein is? It's the rebuilder and the repairer. That's what it does in the body. So where are you going to find it? You're going to find it wherever there's damage. A smoker's arteries, their artery wall gets very thin. And when that wall gets very thin, it's very easy for a hole to develop. And so who do you think he's sent to plug it up? The rebuilder and the repairer. The rebuilder and the repairer comes along and plugs the hole up. Now what's supposed to happen then is high nourishment coming into the body gives the body the tools to repair the hole. And then HDL comes along once the hole is repaired and helps to take LDL away and out of the body. But what's happening is the smoking's not stopping, the nourishment's not coming in, so what happens to LDL basically has to stay there to keep that hole plugged up. And it keeps happening. It's called atherosclerosis, arteriosclerosis. You see that? To say that LDL's the problem is like saying the Band-Aid's the problem that you just put on your sore. You just put it there because you've got a sore. The body doesn't make bad things. If they're out of balance, if they're too high, too low, one has to ask why. What Atkins found, that when someone's on a high carbohydrate diet consuming high glucose, the pancreas is releasing high insulin, and when high insulin keeps being released, it triggers an enzyme in the liver to make more cholesterol. Wow. So it's not the butter on the bread, it's the bread under the butter. The wrong guy's been shot. That's not the problem at all. And what most people get put on when they have too high cholesterol? Lipitor. Well, you can buy a book called The Human Cost of Lipitor. Because what Lipitor does, what the statin drugs do, they inhibit the biochemical pathway in the liver that the liver uses to make cholesterol, so it doesn't make so much. But that same pathway is the pathway that the liver uses to make coenzyme Q10. And coenzyme Q10 is your heart protective enzyme. Wow. I've got a book in the bookshelf. You might like to look at it. It's only little, won't take long to read. It's by Dr. Peter Dingle. It's called The Great Cholesterol Deception. At the back of the book, there are a whole lot of books you can get. The Great Cholesterol Con, The Great Cholesterol Lie. By the way, that one was written by a cardiovascular surgeon who's performed 5,000 bypasses. And he's written a book, The Great Cholesterol Lie. You can even log into a website for the website for cholesterol skeptics. There's another one that says, who will tell the people it's not cholesterol? Wow. 2 pages of books you can get on the subject. Cholesterol is not the problem. One has to ask why if the cholesterol levels are high. Atkins found on his dietary program, where the people are eating cream, butter, cheese, eggs, meat, their cholesterol levels went down. Whew. He found his patients with high triglyceride levels came down. He was so excited about this, he went into the medical journals to see if there was research to prove what he was finding, and there was. In fact, in the 1980s, there was research that proved that dietary cholesterol in the food, had little or no effect on blood cholesterol levels. Atkins found, and this, you might find this interesting, he found that fibre was an essential nutrient. These are the 3 essentials. Fibre is essential. In what way is fibre essential? Our gastrointestinal tract needs to be swept every day, and it is fibre that sweeps it. Our gastrointestinal tract doesn't work without the movement. If the sewage system slows down, the whole body gets poisoned. But it is in the fibre part of the food, in your whole grain pastas, whole grain rices, breads, grains, that's where most of your B vitamins are. Once you throw the fibre away, you've thrown a lot of the essential vitamins. Atkins also found that protein is an essential nutrient. In what way is protein essential? The membrane around every cell in your body is 50% protein. Do you remember yesterday I talked about the double helix strand of the DNA, the crossword bands are amino acids. What are amino acids? Let me show you. This is protein. This is what protein looks like under a microscope. In your gastrointestinal tract, enzymes break that protein down to peptides and polypeptides. And then those peptides and polypeptides come down into your small intestine. And enzymes from your pancreas break them down into amino acids. Only as amino acids can they be then absorbed out of your hollow tube and into your blood and become part of your body. So basically, protein is made up of amino acids. I found it interesting when I read of Florence Nightingale that when she had very sick, weak patients, she would give them raw milk or beef tea. What do raw milk or beef tea contain? Both contain protein in a very simple, usable form. Your body cannot heal without protein. On a low protein diet, the body cannot heal. I've had some very sick people come to our health retreat who've been on raw food or fasting for a couple of years. They haven't had enough protein to heal. So you know what I do? I blast them with protein. My son James, he's got arms like my thighs, and he does bodybuilding and he does it only with natural food. And he actually trains quite a few people. And James is like me, very hard to put on weight. He's worked very hard at these muscles here. What does he eat a lot of? Protein. Every single meal has the protein. You cannot build without the protein. Atkins also found that fat is an essential nutrient. You know what that means? We cannot function properly without it. And the membrane around every cell in the body is 50% protein, 50% fat. The membrane around the nucleus, the membrane around the ribosome, the membrane around the little mitochondria, all these little functions inside every cell in the body is 50% protein, 50% fat. Does that make it pretty essential? It does. We need to be greased and oiled. And every lady that comes here on a fat-free diet, she's got a whole bag full of moisturisers, because what's happening to her skin? It's just drying out. And it gets really dry, the moisturisers go on. How does it feel half an hour later? Same. And they say, Barbara, what do you put on your skin? I say, nothing. Nothing. Not a single cent do I spend on anything I put on my skin. But you know what I eat a nice amount of? Fat. I'd rather do that. I'd rather spend money on beautiful olive oil, beautiful coconut oil, top quality nuts and seeds, chia seeds, avocados. I'd much rather do that. I'd much rather my dollar go there. Because we like eating, don't we? And the food should taste fantastic and be of good quality. If it is, your hair will shine. If it is, the skin will work. Your eyes will see. Your ears will hear. The whole of our body is an illustration of the integrity and the strength and the nutritional value of every cell. And remember, that's what we are, just a bunch of cells. That's why we have to heal from the cellular level. Atkins found that these are 3 essentials and his diet was high in them. Well, where was the fibre? His patients had to eat 3 cups of vegetables a day, and 1 cup had to be all greens. And on Thursday, we're going to look at the acid-alkaline balance, and you'll see the most alkaline food is your greens. I just saw William walk past with a big box of greens. A lot of greens go into your broth at night, and a lot of greens go into, I think it's your 12 o'clock juice, where it's cucumber, apple and greens. Highly alkalizing, as you will see. So that's where the fibre was happening in the Atkins diet. Where's the protein? Well, that's obvious in the meats and the fats. What Atkins found in his research was that carbohydrates are actually non-essential. Now, this is not my opinion, this is fact. Non-essential. Do you know what that means? You can actually live without them. And I very quickly say, I don't suggest you do, because we like them. The biggest danger is when they're refined and when they're overdone. Carbohydrates aren't bad. It's only when they're overdone, and it's only when they're refined. But I must say, I've even met some vegetarians who are overdoing the whole grain carbohydrate. Again, doesn't mean they're bad. We enjoy them and they're high in nourishment, but they can be overdone. I've given you 2 illustrations this morning. One is this high carbohydrate and the other is the Atkins, down to 20 grams of carbohydrates a day. That's extreme. Where do you think we should be? Somewhere in the middle. Yeah? Your carbohydrate part of your meal is your negotiating part of the meal. And the negotiations change depending on your age, your size, your fitness, your size, your physical, mental output through the day. It can change. Don't negotiate the fibre, the protein and the fat. It's the carbohydrate part that you negotiate. It can be as simple as this. Instead of having a whole load of pasta with garlic and oil and parsley, have half a plate full of pasta with a very nice sauce with maybe lentils and lots of parsley and a big salad. See, it's just changing the ratios. Instead of 3 cups of rice and a little bit of dal, you have 1 cup of rice, a lot of dal and a big salad. You see, you can just change the ratios like that. When I have dinner with my boys, they have pasta. They have 3 times the pasta that I have. Same amount of sauce, same amount of salad. I have a little tiny bit of pasta, lots of sauce, lots of salad. You see, I don't need a lot of carbs. I'm just a little lady. They're big, strong men, and they build and tile and all that all day long. And then you know what they do in the evening? They go to the gym and work out. They can have 3 or 4 times the carbohydrates I can have. 4 weeks ago, we had a guy do our program. He was 33. He just walked across Australia from the most western to the most eastern. Took him 5 months, I think 5,600 kilometres. He said by the end, he could eat 5 times the food that he was eating at the beginning. The amazing thing is, and you'll hear about this when I speak about exercise, when you start moving the body, you change the metabolic rate. And those little muscle cells start consuming more and more, and the more you put into this fire, the more energy that you get. But when a person's metabolic rate has changed to storing fat, the more they put in, the bigger they get. It's all to do with the way that the cells run, and I'll discuss that on Friday and show you how to do it. But as one writer I was reading about recently, he said in weight loss and in fitness, he said 80% is due to diet. Wow. And you will find, and James has told me this too, because he goes into, bodybuild.com, that he said all the top bodybuilders recognise what I'm showing you this morning. Get that carbohydrate down. Here are your essentials. And James said, guys come to him all the time. They're just carrying too much weight because what do they love? The sugars, the breads. My son Peter, he's He's very well built too. Peter's, what's Peter's? Peter's 27, James is 34. About 2 years ago, Peter wanted to lose 7 kilos in a week because he was doing a photo shoot, and he ate broccoli and chicken for 1 week. He had all the energy to work, lost his 7 kilos. I saw the photo shoot. Muscle, 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 muscle. Just defines the muscle. Will it harm him? No. He's getting the minerals, he's getting the greens, he's getting the proteins, he's getting the fats. He just stopped his carbohydrate. I'm not advising living on chicken and broccoli for a week, but it's an illustration. It's an illustration to show you where the role of carbohydrate stands in society today, and it explains why on this high carbohydrate diet Aussies are so overweight, they are so sick, there are so many diabetics, and there are so many people that are suffering from cancer. It's not working. I believe that you can do superior to Atkins, and this is why Dr. Carl Benjamin and his wife came to see me. They were so excited about what they heard because they knew Atkins. They said he was a very gracious man. And they said to me that if Atkins had read the China study, which I referred to yesterday, they believed Atkins would have become vegetarian. Atkins was a man of his time. Colin Campbell is a man of his time. I like Atkins' science. It works. Well, how do we get our protein as a vegetarian? Let me show you. On a vegetarian diet, it's impossible to go down to 20 grams of carbohydrates a day, but there is no need. Let's have a look at the vegetarian protein. Let's have a look at the oldest history book we have, which is the Bible. We'll go to Genesis 1:29, where God's saying to Adam and Eve what to eat. And this is what God said to Adam and Eve. He said, the herb-bearing seed, every herb-bearing seed which is on the face of the earth. What's a herb-bearing seed? Let's have a look at the food. We'll have a look at the protein content and the carbohydrate content. Herb-bearing seed. Grain. Grain is a herb-bearing seed. There's your wheat, oats, rye, barley, millet, amaranth, quinoa. Grains are high in protein, but they are also high in carbohydrate. How many on our carbohydrate list are from the grain department? Grain, 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 grain. Well, most of them are from the grain department, which is where your high carb comes from. Another herb-bearing seed is the legume. The legume is your lentil, chickpea, lima bean, black-eyed beans, kidney beans, soy. Legumes are high in protein. If you want to know how to cook legumes, get a Lebanese, an Italian, an Indian cookbook. They have a lot of legumes because they did not have the ground, never have had the ground to graze the cattle. So they get their protein from the legumes. And I think you'll agree with me, they make beautiful things out of legumes. And there's so many legumes and so many things you can do with them. Legumes are high in protein, but they are medium to low in carbohydrates. They're about the third the carbohydrate that you will find in the grain. Most nutritionists lump these two together, but it is not so. We have a nutrition almanac in our bookshelf which shows you every food and every protein and every carbohydrate, every nutrient in any food, and you can look for yourself. Herb-bearing seed. The seed. When I'm saying the seed, I'm referring to pumpkin seed, sesame seed, sunflower seed, chia seed, flaxseed or linseed. These seeds are high in protein and they are quite low in carbohydrate. So that every herb-bearing seed which is on the face of the earth, and the tree in the which is a fruit yielding seed. There's another seed. What fruit yields a seed? The nut. We live on a wonderful part of the planet. There are so many nuts, aren't they? And we're the only country in the world that can afford to eat macadamia nut. Get rid of the peanut butter, start the macadamia butter. Beautiful. So macadamia, cashew, almond, Brazil, hazelnut, pecan, walnut, so many nuts. Nuts are high in protein and they are low in carbohydrate. And then the final thing that God says in that verse, he says, the seed, to you it shall be for meat. Interesting. The seed, to you it shall be for meat. What does it mean by meat? The main substance of our food. It is the seed that is high in your fibers, proteins and fat. The three essentials, low in the carbohydrates. What is the seed? The seed is like the chicken's egg. It's the reproductive part of the plant. And for that seed to reproduce itself, it must contain all the essential amino acids, and it does. Have you heard that they don't? Well, open the Nutrition Almanac and see for yourself. Every single one of these foods has every amino acid needed for life in the body. Interesting. And yet we're told only meat has. Is that right? To maintain, to ensure that you're getting enough of your essentials and to ensure you don't overdo your carbohydrate, my suggestion is that you decrease the grain part of your meal and increase the legume, nut, seed part of the meal. That's an easy way to do it. A very easy way to do it. And from tomorrow, our meals will be an illustration of how you can do that. So what's your body doing today? Now that we have established the importance of the liver, we've looked at how the liver deals with the food that you're eating. What's your liver doing today? And what is today? It is the second day of your detox program. We are not giving you enough glucose to run on, and so some of your fat stores are getting broken down to release some excess glucose. But as those fat stores get broken down, they're releasing something a little bit more sinister. They're releasing the fat-soluble toxins that have been building up in our bodies over many years. Environmental poisons, we are subjected to all of them. Every time I fly a plane, I'm subjected to them. Every time you're in the city. The good news is, we've been given a liver that can deal with them, and I'm going to show you how it deals with them. So here you are at Misty Mountain Health Retreat. The fat cells are getting broken down to give a little bit more glucose to run on. The fat-soluble toxins are once again released into the bloodstream. They once again go to the liver. The liver says, oh, not this nasty guy again. You see, every time fat-soluble toxins come into our body and come to the liver, often the liver says, this is a nasty guy. Wrap him up in fat and store him. Then you come to Misty Mountain Health Retreat. As the fat stores get released to release the glucose, also this fat-soluble toxin's released. Back again into the bloodstream, up again to the liver. The liver says, not this nasty guy again. Wrap him up in fat and store. Hang on, they're at Misty Mountain Health Retreat. Hang on, they're getting high nourishment. I think we can break this fat-soluble toxin down to a water-soluble state. Then it can be released out. Phase 1 began yesterday on your first day of your juice fast. Phase 1, the liver took this fat-soluble toxin and it broke it down to a metabolite. That metabolite is a nasty guy. That metabolite is sometimes 100 times more toxic than it originally was. That metabolite creates a lot of free radicals. That metabolite is sometimes, often, very volatile, highly volatile. And you might say, what's the body doing? It's just created something worse. That is true, but it is a process. This is the symbol for the metabolite. Why does it do that? Well, it can be explained by what happens when you're going to, say, clean out the garage. What does it look like halfway through? 100 times messier? What does it look like when I'm weeding my winter garden? 100 times messier. It's a process. And your liver has certain needs to protect your body from this metabolite at this stage. It needs antioxidants. Antioxidants are free radical scavengers. Antioxidants come along with a lot of extra electrons, and a free radical is missing an electron. What are your best antioxidants? The most potent antioxidant is beta-carotene. And beta-carotene is found in all your green-coloured and all your orange-coloured vegetables. So your green barley, very high. Your orange carrot juice, very high. That box of herbs that I just saw William carrying, green herbs, very high. Vitamin C. We are giving you vitamin C with every dose of green barley that you have. Vitamin C is very famous, probably the most famous antioxidant. And we know vitamin C as ascorbic acid. But in the last 10 years, researchers have found that ascorbic acid, when it gives all of its electrons away, it can become a free radical. But in nature, ascorbic acid comes hand in hand with bioflavonoids. And those bioflavonoids continually feed extra electrons back to ascorbic acid to protect it from becoming a free radical. So the bottom line is, if you buy vitamin C, make sure it's ascorbic acid with bioflavonoids. And most of your reputable brands will have that. Vitamin E. Vitamin E is a fat-soluble vitamin, so it's only found in your nuts, your seeds and your grains. Where are you getting vitamin E at the moment? We are giving it to you in your protein drink. Your protein drink contains soy. Soy is very high in vitamin E. Your protein drink also contains coconut cream, which also has a little vitamin E in it. Stage 1 also requires minerals and vitamin Bs. I put them sideways because they are not antioxidants, so to speak, but they are also required at this stage, which we are giving you. Within 36 hours of starting a detox program, phase 2 kicks in. Phase 2 began in your bodies this morning. Phase 2, the liver took this highly volatile, free radical creating metabolite and joined it together with amino acids. The union of this highly toxic metabolite and the amino acids, the union together creates the water-soluble state. And it's the water-soluble state we've all been waiting for, because it's as a water-soluble state it can be easily released out of your body. And here's the little symbol for the water-soluble state. Wave in a box. Phase 3. Phase 3 happens in conjunction with phase 2. Phase 3, the liver takes this water-soluble state and it releases back into the bloodstream, where it can be easily urinated out, sweated out. Your most important steam bath is tonight, because you will have more of these water-soluble metabolites being released out of your body today, because this morning your body went into phase 2 of the liver detox. That explains why at 8 o'clock this morning we gave you a protein drink. We'll be giving you 3 protein drinks today to help your body cope with these highly volatile metabolites that are being released today. That protein drink provides the amino acid that the liver needs to join together with that toxic metabolite. The medical term is conjugates. It joins it together and it creates the water-soluble state. Tomorrow we will be giving you solid food, and the detox will slow down a little bit. You'll still be detoxing a little bit because you'll be having an 18-hour fast every 24 hours. We'll be serving you breakfast like a king, lunch like a queen, and we'll be giving you broth at night. So you'll be fasting from lunchtime every day through till breakfast the next morning. People say to me, do you ever go on a fast? I say, I do an 18-hour fast most days. I have lunch and breakfast like kings and queens, and then I don't eat again till the next morning. How have I got energy to climb up my hills in the morning? My glycogen stores. And they will be built up again as I eat my breakfast and lunch, ready for my extra activity. Riding my bike to work, running up the hill, it's all there. You see, the food that you're eating, it doesn't give you energy often until quite later. Because it has to go into your liver has to send it, has to store it. And that's why you can go 2 days without eating. There are stores, and you will see, when you see this, that we are nutritionally supporting your liver. We are giving you the beta-carotenes, the minerals, the B vitamins. That explains why your urine's fluorescent yellow, because we're giving you a super B mix with every green barley, and we're providing the amino acids so that you can effectively detox. We need more protein today than any generation that has ever lived, because we are dealing with more fat-soluble toxins than any generation that has ever lived on planet Earth. We have a look at the slips and the oil spills. We have a look that they stopped all fishing in Sydney Harbour, was it 18 months ago, because the children of the fishermen had mercury and dioxin levels in their blood, little kids far higher than they should be. So this information is very important. This information has only been around since 2002. I gave this lecture in America one year, and a man came up and said, "That's very interesting." He said, "But it is not for your lay people, that's for your academics." I said, "Lay people have livers too, you know." And isn't that true? In my book that I'm writing, I'm spending a whole chapter on the liver, because that is vital information. It also explains why Florence Nightingale noticed her sick men responded to beef tea and raw milk because of the protein. It also explains why Atkins got the results. I think Atkins had passed away before this information was known, but it also shows why he was getting the results that he did. Do you remember what I said yesterday? Truth never changes. It's always the same. It might be built upon, but it's always there. And he was a man of his time. But I believe you can do superior to the Atkins diet by doing a vegetarian version. By the way, if someone wanted to lose weight, what would they drastically drop? The carbohydrates. If someone wanted to put on weight, what would they increase? Not the carbs. Because I don't know anyone that wants to put that on. I find on this diet, which is high fibre, substantial protein, sufficient fat, underweight put it on, overweight lose it, right weight stay the same. So it's a balancing diet. I had 2 people come here. The man was 46 kilos, the lady was 36 kilos. They were gorging themselves on carbohydrates to try and put on weight. They said, "Please don't put us on a 2-day fast." I said, "I got it." Your stomach is so overworked, you're not absorbing any of your nutrients. I said to them, "I'll give you protein every meal. Sorry, I'll give you a protein drink every juice." Atkins proved that if you're having sufficient protein, you will never lose muscle. No one wants to lose that. I gave them protein every juice. Their stomachs got a rest. They actually had put on weight by the end of the program. Sometimes overweight and underweight people have the same problem. Digestion's not working well. And oh, how the stomach loves a couple of days break. Our helicopter driver over at our other property at 5 Day Creek, he used to bring people in, especially interstate guests that used to fly to Coffs, and then he would fly them in. And then he'd come and pick them up at the end of the week. He said, "I don't know what you do to those people in there, but," he said, "the people I pick up are different to the people I drop off." He and his wife booked in. They wanted to know what was happening in here. "What's happened? You've had a break." What we do to you this week, the results you get would take 6 months on a very good lifestyle program. That's a bargain, isn't it? We just high speed and zoom everything up. When you give the body the right conditions, it responds. It desperately desires to heal you. It desperately desires to balance you and have you living life as its best. That's the good news. All we've got to do is work with it. I'm going to give everyone a break now. Please have a 5-minute break, and when you come back, we're going to have a look at the wonders of those little chemical messengers called hormones.